Hello first years and welcome to our first video lesson. Now I gave you an assignment of an open book test on decimals, percentages and fractions, which you'll have seen in your Google Classroom this morning, and you have the whole week to do that. So on Friday is when I will be looking for everybody to have uploaded their photographs or scans or however you want to provide it from that test. But if you have any questions in the meantime, you can ask me. What I will say is I'm not going to answer questions on how to do them. I need you to work with your notes and your book and the knowledge that you have, because what I'm trying to figure out is from each of you guys how much you understand it at this point. So hopefully that's clear. Today then we are going to start on a new topic. This is chapter 8 in our books. And in the book it just calls it the fundamental principle of counting and probability, but we can shorten that just to counting and probability. You will need your notes copy. We'll be taking down some definitions and examples. So if you don't have that in front of you, you can pause the video and go and get that now, okay? So we need to start with some definitions and descriptions, and we're going to start by talking about probability itself. And what is probability? I think a lot of you probably already know what this is. And when we talk about probably, we're talking about something that is likely to be true, but we don't know that it's true 100%. And all of these words that I'm using, they're quite mathematical words. Probability, let's write down a definition of it to start with. Probability is a measure of how likely something is to happen. We're just going to use words for the time being, and let's draw what we call a probability scale. So we're going to draw a line in our notes copy, going all the way across the page. And we're going to divide up that line from the bottom to the top. And at the very bottom are things that definitely can't happen. And we say that those things are impossible. And at the very top, we have things that definitely will happen. And we say that those are certain. This is what we call a probability scale. So anything that happens in the world is somewhere between impossible and certain. Everything that happens. For example, that you will have maths tomorrow. Is it certain? It's definitely close to it. Maybe it's not exactly certain. It's not impossible. That I will jump off the ground and suddenly start flying. It's impossible, right? It's impossible. That I will fly in some fashion in my life. Well, that's not impossible. I could get on an airplane. So between impossible and certain, there's a few more words that we want to look at. Right in the middle of the probability scale, the exact halfway point, we call it even chance. It could happen, might not happen. We sometimes use the term 50-50, and I'll come back to why we say 50-50 in a little bit. So, is there an even chance that I'll fly? Is there an even chance that you guys will have maths tomorrow? I feel like it's more likely than even chances, right? So we want maybe another word in here. Something that is likely. And then on the other chance, on the other side, that it will snow tomorrow. Not impossible, but it's raining right now, so it's unlikely. And that's our probability scale. For the moment, that's enough for us to describe probabilities. What's the probability that it will be sunny tomorrow? I might have to look up the weather forecast. I'd say even chance. You can see though, and of course we're learning maths, that the words are not going to be quite enough. So later, we'll learn how to put numbers on these. And other things that happen. So you can see that probability is all about things that happen. Now we have a special word for things that happen. So another definition that's useful for us to have is an event. So this is the mathematical word that we use for things that something that happens. An event is something that happens. So rather than saying how likely is something to happen, we say how likely is an event, something that happens. For example, the weather. A certain number on a dice coming up. The hair color of a new baby. All of these things are things that happen, and they are things that we can calculate probabilities for, or certainly describe the probability. So what is the probability or the likelihood of a newborn baby having black hair? I don't know for certain, but I'd say it's pretty likely. A lot of newborn babies have black hair, even if it changes later. What's the probability of a newborn baby having no hair? It does happen, but it's unlikely. What's the probability of a newborn baby having blue hair? Well, that's impossible. That has never happened because it's not a natural hair colour. So event is one of the things that we talk about when we talk about probabilities. The other word that we want to use about probability is trial. So a trial is an experiment in probability. An experiment in probability. For example, rolling a die, 1 die, 2 dice, okay? And it's fine if you say 1 dice. A lot of people do. Rolling a die, flipping a coin, checking the weather. So how are these different? Well, the trial is something that we do, and an event is something that happens. So I roll the die, and a certain number comes up. Rolling the die is the trial. The number that comes up is the event. So when the number comes up, when the die lands, that's the event. Now, there's something else we want to talk about. The event is something that happens. But the outcome of the trial is the result. Okay? So an outcome is a possible result of a trial, and it must be possible. For example, getting 1 roll a die. Now these all seem really similar, don't they? So what's the difference between an outcome and an event? Well, an event can actually match more than one outcome, and it can even match no outcomes. Remember I said blue hair on a baby. That would be an event, but it doesn't match any of the outcomes. So the outcomes must be possible. Let's add on to our event up here. I said it's something that happens that matches 0, 1, or more outcomes of a trial. Blue hair matches no outcomes. If I said I might have an event where I get a number greater than 4 on a die. So that's an event, getting a number greater than 4, something that happens, and it matches more than one possible outcome from rolling the die. Okay, I know that's fairly complicated, but it's important that we get these concepts to begin with. So an outcome is a possible result of a trial. And then finally, we want to talk about a sample space. So the sample space is a list, in fact it's a set, of all possible outcomes from a trial. What would be an example? So if we were to roll a die, the possible outcomes are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's if I roll a 6-sided die. Of course, we can have other numbers for the sides of dice. So we can have 4-sided dice, we can have 20-sided dice, but the standard dice that we are used to seeing have 6 sides. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the sample space when we roll a 6-sided die, which we sometimes just call a D6, a 6-sided die. Okay, right, well, let's look at a quick example of how we might do that, how we might answer questions regarding this. Just move this back here. So, example 1. An Olympic swimmer wins a medal. Now, hopefully you know what the possible outcomes are for the medals in the Olympics, right? List the possible outcomes and in this case I mean the medals she could receive. Okay, very, very straightforward answer. She could win a gold medal, she could win a silver medal, or she could win a bronze medal. Now, I've said to you guys before, mathematicians, we're very lazy, so I will also accept it if you just did GSB like that. Okay, this is a perfectly acceptable answer in mathematics. So that's also called the sample space. Let's look at a second example. Example 2. And we're going to say a 12-sided die is rolled once. Write down the sample space for the possible outcomes of this trial. Okay, so 100 is not a possible outcome. 3.5 is not a possible outcome. Whole numbers on a 12-sided die, they would be the numbers 1 to 12, like this. Okay, we're going to be getting on to more complicated examples than this, but I just wanted to start by looking at the very basic idea and the definitions that we have. So for homework now, what I want you to do, I am stopping the lesson there because it's going to take you that long between pausing and taking everything down. And as you go through, if there's something you don't understand, pause the video, play it back again. And if you still don't understand it after that, you can leave a comment in Google Classroom under this lesson. I'd prefer if you ask your questions in Google Classroom, because that way everybody can see the same answers, which I think is the best thing, the best way of doing it. So I want you to learn your definitions. And I also want you to look on page 120 of the book, and you're going to be listing outcomes in questions 1 to 4. As usual, I'll upload a screenshot of that into Google Classroom. I'm sure you have your books at home, but if you prefer, if it makes it easier for you, you can just use the screenshots in Google Classroom. Tomorrow, I'll have a video where I go through the corrections of the homework, and then we'll learn a little bit more about probability as well. Okay, thank you so much. Best of luck today. Bye.